Carving the Stencil with John Marshall. I'm going to reposition my test sheet as well as my stencil to test the left side of the carved portion of my imagery. This is to verify the repeat from left to right. Let me pull out my pigments and brushes again. Oh, actually, I guess I won't be using red for a moment. Let me continue with the green. I'm going to be very careful to blot it, of course, and to catch that registration mark. That's a crucial point in my registering and my matching of my designs. So again, rub very carefully, getting an accurate reproduction of what I've already carved. And then let me pull up the edge to see how well I've done. Yes, it's a good, clean design. Let me take just a moment to clean up my workspace, get everything prepared for the next phase. I'm going to set my stencil aside for just a moment while I prepare my test strips. I'll need my X-Acto knife and ruler again, and this time I'm going to cut just a little bit outside of my test area, being careful not to accidentally cut away those register marks. So again, cut a clean, sharp line and set the strip aside for a moment. I'm going to do the same thing with what will be the bottom repeat. Line up the stencil carefully, make sure I see the register marks, don't cut them away accidentally, and slice off this strip. Okay, at this point this paper is excess, so we'll just get that out of the way for the moment. I'm ready to bring my stencil back down into my work area. I'm going to now attempt to match up my top and bottom portions of the stencil. So the first thing I'm going to do is locate those green dots and punch those holes with my hole punch. This will help me to make sure that I'm lining up everything just exactly right. So let's see, let's make sure that everything lines up, that I'm not confusing myself by putting it at the wrong end of the stencil, for example. So yes, okay, I can see those register dots. I'm going to match them up very carefully. I get the whole thing lined up properly, move it up. Okay, now that I'm sure I've got what I want, I can go ahead and lower the test strip down to the bottom section of my stencil, and here again be very careful to match up those register dots precisely. This is crucial. If I don't match them up now, it's going to cause all sorts of problems later on. I need to secure my test strip in position, so I can use a stapler, or Scotch tape would work just as well, but I have to be very careful not to allow it to shift away from those register dots as I do this. Because I have an accurate reproduction of my top border, I can now use this strip to cut accurately the bottom repeat. So let me turn it over to make it easier to cut. I'm confident that my top green section is an accurate reproduction of the bottom. However, as I examine it closely, I can see that it may not quite exactly match with what I have Xeroxed onto my stencil sheet. You may not be able to see what I have planned next, so let's go to a close-up. Let's take a close look at our template, keeping in mind that it's the reproduced cut section of the top of the stencil, and we're now getting ready to carve the bottom portion of our stencil to create a repeat. We have to look very carefully at each section to see how well it matches with the design that's drawn on our stencil. We can see that there's some parts here that are off, and so it's a bit worrisome. So I'm going to focus on the green, and I'm going to kind of ignore the design that's in the stencil itself because it's the green that has already been cut, and the uncut portion is still a bit flexible. So very carefully place my blade in position precisely along that edge of the green and cut into my bottom portion of my stencil. Again, reposition my blade, cut very carefully. I'm going to make sure I'm keeping in mind what the design is on the other side. Cut very carefully into position and simply adjust the design as I go if necessary. The crucial part is to be true to the green design because that has already been cut and can't be changed. So I'll go along in this manner bit by bit, see how that doesn't quite match up. So it's more important that the green be held true And so I'm cutting off quite a bit of that black design to make it match my green portion of the template. Also notice that I'm overlapping a bit. I'm cutting about a 1/16 of an inch into the template portion, which will later become an overlapping portion of the stencil. I'll just go ahead and finish up this petal, being careful again now to follow the edges of the original design as I cut into the section I adjusted for earlier. Here again, I want to allow for about a 1/16 of an inch overlap by cutting into the green portion. As long as you are mindful of the original cuts in the green, you'll have a very accurate stencil. So let's go ahead, continue cutting in just a bit into the green for our overlap, adjusting the design as necessary, and keeping in mind at all times any distortions or areas that don't match up properly in the earlier design. So notice how I've just had to alter this one considerably. It doesn't match up much at all. So I cut in my 1/16 of an inch. And because I had to make adjustments with that part of the petal, I'm going to have to make adjustments on the other side of it. Otherwise I'd wind up with too broad a line. So here again, cut in the 1/16 of an inch as I consistently do. Now when I come to this part, this is actually a bridge, and so I don't need to take it into consideration when trying to do a repeating match. It'll be removed at some later point. So I just continue to cut to the next flower. And then, planning ahead, I go ahead and slice off this section, rounding out my blossom as I go. You're going to continue in this manner along the entire bottom section until you finish carving all of your details. Once you've completed that, flip the stencil over and do the same thing for the side repeat. Just as we did for the earlier up and down repeat, we're now going to prepare the sideways repeat by punching the holes, the register marks that were transferred from the opposite carved side. We need to be very careful, as we did before, to match up the register marks precisely so as to get an accurate cut. So here again, take care, take time, go ahead and get it in there just right, and then go ahead and secure it in position.